All right, everybody, welcome to our Week 2 edition of the Southeastern Sports Network podcast. Robbie Rhodes coming to you along with Mark Willoughby and Alan Waddell. Guys, first week down of the Southeastern football camp, jumping into Week 2 starting on Monday. You know how this goes, guys. You seem like camp just starts and then the season is upon you and it just sneaks up like that. I think these coaches have what feels like a long amount of time, with it being a basically a full month or so till the first games, but there's a lot to fit in for these coaches and see a lot of players over that amount of time. And Southeastern's been doing the split practices with half the roster going out for the first unit and the second half coming out in the second unit. They'll combine them all starting this week and go full on the rest of the way. But that's a good way for coaches to be able to, individually recognize more players, see their techniques, see what they're doing, get more reps. And Coach Selfo talked about that this week to the media. Getting the opportunity to see, a kid get more reps in that split practice opportunity when it's not the entire roster. So been going through that, a lot of good things. We'll talk about some things that we're seeing that we like from camp this week. And then also we'll talk about some things that might, are going to be question marks going into the season about, hey, what could be our deficiencies that we need to get answered before the first game. We'll take a look at our schedule and just get ready for fall camp. Get ready for the season as we go through fall camp here over the next 3.5 weeks before the opening football game, August 30th in Ruston against Louisiana Tech. Mark, you've been out there most this week. We'll start with you first. Just your takeaway from what you saw this week from the positive side of things.
A good first week, obviously. But it's the first week, and it's split practices. Yesterday, they actually came together yesterday and had some scrimmage yesterday morning. But, again, it's tough to get any kind of read on the actual entire team as a whole until they all come together and you get a chance to see them for a few days. But the biggest takeaway, as I've said, the last couple, pods that we've done is what does the team look like? Is this a veteran team? They're in great shape, physical. They're running around. There's really not a lot of standing around, not a lot of confusion. And I'll be honest with you. We all know Frank Selfo. you hear him at practice. He's probably been I don't want to say low key or laid back, but hasn't been as much really since the last couple of years. This is more like he was in 2019, 2021, 2022, which tells me that he thinks that he has that kind of team. I don't know that's what he thinks or not, but that's what it seems like. You just see the confidence that he has in his football team. So that's been the first week. No glaring issues or anything like that. Guys are healthy at this point. We'll start to see tomorrow when they really get after it, because it's going to be a sprint to August 30th in Louisiana Tech.
Alan, your thoughts from what you've heard and seen coming out of practice?
Yeah, I think the thing that kind of jumps out is the word continuity. It looks like, you got your coordinators back and you got a lot of veteran players. It doesn't look to me like a first week of practice. It's just like everybody kind of knows what's going on and it's something what we kind of expect out of this group. And I think that's why there is so much confidence going into the season. And, talking to Coach Selko a few times in the offseason, he thinks he has a good football team. And now does that mean we're going to go 9-3, 10-2? We don't know that. But he thinks he has a really good football team. And certainly there's some areas that there's some concerns that it has to – if we're going to be good, we have to see some things play out, have some different guys step up. And I know we're going to talk about that here tonight. But, I think the first week of practice, to me, just kind of zoning in as it looks like, it just kind of looks like they picked up right where they left off at the end of last year when they played so well down the stretch. You have a lot of those same guys. It's the same coaching staff, minus a couple, but it's a lot. It just looks very, very similar because you have a lot of the same players and a lot of the same coaches doing the same things.
Can I
I think, go ahead now.
No, I was just going to say I agree with that. To me, it's continuity. I think the continuity is there coming out of last year. And the bulk of this team was here in the spring. So that, the transfers that came in, most of them were here. So they were able to absorb into it and become a cohesive bunch. So again, that helps because the first week isn't spent trying to teach everything. And I think that's where really the last couple of years you had so many new faces and turnover coming out of 2022 into 2023 and last year, and you had a step back. And I think now we're kind of back on track. We got an older football team, it's mature, and it seems more like the 2020-21 back when you had COVID and all those kids were getting extra years and you had an old football team. I think we're back to that point, which lends to continuity.
Yeah, and Mark, kind of to that point as well. One thing, the climate of college football and college athletics, really, so to speak, I mean, is hey, we're kind of starting over every year. It's a new team every year, and I think we're one of the few teams, especially I would think in the FCS, that had a good football team last year and brought a lot back. There's just not a lot of this going on around the country, and I think back to. Let's go way back, when Ron Roberts was here. And, Ron really believed in bringing in a lot of transfers. There was always a lot of different players in. And sometimes it lends itself to some slow starts. Well, if you look at the last couple of years, that's kind of how it's been here because we've had a lot of new players, a lot of new coaches, and then we got up to some slow starts. I mean, obviously the disaster a couple of years ago that we could never really dig out of. And then last year, a really slow start, and then you do dig out of it and end up having a really good season and have a chance to get into the playoffs. Didn't happen, but you certainly were playing as good as anybody in the country there down the stretch. Hopefully this year, not only with the continuity, but also the way the schedule lays out, hopefully you don't have that type of slow start and you're constantly trying to dig yourself out of a hole that we've done the last couple of years. Even you think of the year with Cephas. We started 0-2 that year. I'm hoping that we can get off to a good start this year, and I think with the schedule, the way it lays out, and then obviously with a team that's going to be able to hit the ground running week one, I think you're not going to look like you did, early on last year in those games as far as against Tulane, against Southern Miss, and those FBS games because you're a better team and you guys know what they're doing at this point of the year.
I agree. I think last year a lot of the issues really was the schedule. I mean, you played Tulane, who was one of the best group of 6 teams in the country last year with a loaded roster. And you really, honestly, didn't play that badly the first half. It just got away from you because Tulane's so good. And then you kind of lay an egg against Southern Miss, a team you probably would have been more competitive with. Let's say you flip those games and you play Southern Miss first versus Tulane. Maybe it's a little different. But this team was able to right the ship, starting with Eastern Washington, had a blip against South Dakota State, and then kind of ran off 6 out of 7 to close the year. Could have won them all.
Tarleton lost to
Tarleton. I'm sorry, lost to Tarleton. But again, 3-point loss. I mean, you had a chance to win out after Southern Miss. I mean, or South Dakota State. You had a chance. I mean, you were right there. You ended up losing 2 close ones, but that feeds into this year. And again, we talked about the cohesiveness. Now you start off with an FBS team in Louisiana Tech. Who knows how they're going to be? You talk about transfer portal and all that. This is a Louisiana Tech team that you feel like you ought to be able to compete with, at least physically, in that ball game. And then you get a chance to get some FCS opponents before you go play LSU. So again, there is confidence in this bunch, but we'll talk about the concerns, and there are some, and we'll point them out here in a few minutes.
Yeah, I think that when getting to go out to practice on Thursday and just kind of glancing at it for a little while, the thing that jumps out to me is just we've been doing this a long time. Mark, this 21st year for you. Me and Alan have been doing this in this capacity for 19 years now. This is our 19th year. You can just tell what a team looks like, when they're practicing in this early part of the season. You just tell we have some. I think the old adage is like we have some good-looking dudes on this team. When you go out there and just watch them, the way they move, the way they run. A lot of guys are just flying around. Now I'm talking about skill guys or wide receivers. I noticed the linebackers, kind of in some of that 7-on-7 stuff they were doing, run really well side to side. I thought that offensive line, you have some leaner body guys built kind of strong the right way. There's no like heavy set kind of low to the ground guys that can't move well. These are kind of in the sense of how they're supposed to look in this day and age of college football. When you see that and you have that gives you a lot of excitement that like, hey, this roster is built correctly to make a run, to have the kind of speed that you need to compete in the Southland. Because let's face it, the Southland Conference is a league that has a lot of team speed on offense on each one of these teams we play, and you have to have to play sideline to sideline a lot in this league on the defensive side of the football. And I think from what I saw this week, in just a short little glimpse, right, we have a lot of those guys. And, basing off of what I saw from some of those same guys last year, the defense could carry the day this year. I think the offense will be better, but we just need the offense, I think, to be, you want them to be as good as they can be, right? But if we can just get a little bit more production out of that offense and a little bit more consistency out of that offense in 2025 with the defense that I foresee us having, you could all of a sudden be a 9-3, 10-2 football team in 2025.
Well, the thing about the offense, first of all, I think it's going to be a lot better. I don't think it's going to be a little bit better. I think it's going to be a lot better simply because you got more explosiveness at skill positions. I mean, you've got some wide receivers that can go, they can catch it and run with after the catch. You get DeAndre Jackson back, who looks as good as ever in terms of his explosiveness. So far in camp, I know he was like that in the spring as well. He's going to add a different dimension. You got a running backs group. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mark, I should have mentioned him earlier. When I saw him Thursday, I think I told Alan this. When I left Thursday, he stood out to me more than any player on the field.
Well, he runs at a different level. I mean, he's SEC, NFL. I mean, he's got speed that'll match up at any level of football.
And he had good vision. He ran routes well. And I had just kind of forgot about him. I know he went to JC last year and had to get some grades right and got them right, and he's back on the roster and had a really good year in junior college last year. But he, to me, I mean, Mark, I think you and I talked about this, but really through the entire season, especially in the first 6 or 7 weeks, Antonio Martin was our offense, right? And so you had to question about what that would look like when he's not coming back. And I'm not saying this young man's going to be our offense, but he is going to be a really good answer to losing Antonio Martin. Totally different kind of back. But he really could be a guy who could have a breakout season this year and really be someone who this coaching staff says, man, we got to find a way to get the ball in his hands all year long.
Well, I'll be real quick and let Alan jump in, but the thing that he does, and he's not going to carry the ball 20 times like Antonio did, but you got to get it to him 7, 8, 10, 12, get the ball in his hands in space. And I think if you do that, he's got a chance to house one. He's not going to do that every week, but what it does is it forces him to be accounted for. So then all of a sudden you're running backs by committee, and I know we'll get into the position by position breakdown eventually, but you don't have Antonio Martin, but you do have Rodeo Graham, who's solid between it. He's just a solid back. He's been a backup here. He's got a chance to maybe carry a bigger role. Jaden Henry is a transfer who's very similar to Rodeo, similar type running back. Then you got a true freshman out of Hahnville, Calvin Smith, who looks like Antonio Martin. Matter of fact, you're sitting there watching him going, man, this guy might be 2.0. Don't want to throw that on him yet because he's a freshman, hasn't carried the football yet. But he is a physical back with good vision. He's got a chance to eventually, but you're not going to load him up early. But as he gets comfortable, you got a chance to have a pretty good back there. And then, of course, you throw in DeAndre. So, and then there's a Kyrie Paul, who's similar to Xavier Roberson a few years ago. Another similar type back. So now you got a little bit more versatility, but you're going to have more depth at wide receiver. So now you've got Jalen DiMaggio back. You add in, Kai Prian. You added Kentrell Prejean is a guy that I think Lion fans are going to really like. He played for South Dakota State last year, scored a touchdown in our ballpark, had it called back. He's very explosive. You have him. I mean, you have a host of guys. So I think you have more weapons, and then you got two quarterbacks that can get out of the pocket, escape, extend plays, get the ball downfield. Again, they got to go prove it. They got to play. Carson Camp's been a starter. Kyle Lowe has not yet, but he's played some. He's a young player. I think you just got a chance to be more dynamic. But the biggest thing is you just don't want to do any harm. You don't want to turn the ball over. If you just don't turn the ball over, get some explosive plays, this offense has got a chance to be good enough. Go ahead.
Well, I think that's one of the questions, on the offensive side of the ball, is at times last year we were pretty vanilla. But was that vanilla because we didn't have the personnel to be more dynamic? And, that's kind of the question. So this is year 2 of Anthony running the offense. We're going to get an opportunity to see that because now I think he has more tools in the toolbox. So we'll see how it plays out. He's going to have more dynamic players. And going back to DeAndre Jackson for just a second, Mark, you think about it, we've had some really good backs here, since we've been doing this, but we haven't had a lot of like home run hitters that can go 80, and you think of like Xavier Roberson, he was one of those guys. You think of Marcus Cooper, probably his freshman year was probably one of the most explosive we ever had. But like Carlos Washington, great back, wasn't going to go 75 or 80. Jesse Britt, really good back, but again, not a guy that's going to explode out of there. Even Antonio, he had a couple of long runs last year. I think back to the Charleston game, and a couple of long runs, but that wasn't really his game. I think DeAndre Jackson's the type of guy that, man, you missed him in the hole, and he's going 80. You're looking at the back of his jersey, and we haven't had a lot of guys like that.
And we saw that 2 years ago, but he was nicked up. He got hurt in the Mississippi State game. I don't know if you remember, early in that Mississippi State game, we drove down.
Ran that little pitch to him?
Get a little pit. He got to the outside easy, and he outran him to the corner and basically showed he can run at that level. Got hit out of bounds, and he just kind of wasn't the same. He was nicked up, had a tough time getting back on the field. Finally, got some carries against Northwestern State. Now, he erupted, had 80, 85-yard run in that ball game, kind of showed you his explosiveness. And but that's what he can do. And he goes to junior college last year, and he averaged 8, 9, 10 yards a carry or whatever in junior college last year. So, and again, he's not going to touch the ball 20 times a game, but basically just get it to him 7 or 8, maybe 10. Hand it to him, throw him the ball out in the flat. He can catch the ball in the backfield. So he just gives you that threat. And just having the threat is a big deal. And Alan, you talked about being vanilla. I think that was the case. I think you were vanilla because that's what you had. You had a running back who was a bell cow. You could turn around and hand it to him. You could play action off of it, throw it about 20, 22, 23, 4 times a game. Eat up some first downs, eat up some clock, because you had a good enough defense, especially when you got into conference play, to have a chance to win, stay in some close games. And that's how the season played out. And you talk about last year, I think there were 6 games decided by a field goal or less, or 4 points or less, and we won 4 of them. You lost 2, but there were 3-point games. So,
well, that was the difference between last year and the year before.
Right.
We lost all the close games.
That's right. Exactly. So this year, I think you just got a chance to be better offensively. I think the defense, and we'll get into the concerns on defense. There are a couple, but I think it's a defense that's got a chance to maybe be better. Because I just think you're going to be so good on the back end at linebacker and secondary that you're not going to have the mistakes where you're just getting beat over the top, for cheap touchdowns and that sort of thing. I think you're still going to be really good up front in the middle, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, guys, we come on here every week and we just talk about, oh, wow, this is great, this guy looks great, this guy looks great. And not to say there's anything wrong with that, but right now we're going to kind of hit on a couple things each of someone that kind of coming into the season concerns us. And not concern in a bad way, but just the concern to say, hey, more about this position group or this side of the ball has to prove it to us this year, and is a concern. And I'll start real quick. I think that there's a few that I have, obviously, but I think it's just back to what we talked about. The offensive side of the ball has to prove it. You like I said, you lost your quarterback from last year. You're gonna have a new quarterback coming in to this season. You got a quarterback's going to play and start the season that wasn't even on the roster in 2024, wasn't here, right? So has to come in, has to learn a whole new situation in a short amount of time. And so that's different than a quarterback who was like an Eli Sawyer or like a Cephas Johnson or like a Cole Kelly that was here, wasn't the starter, but was in the system, right? And so, this will be the first time that's happened under Coach Selfo. It's happened 2 other times. It happened in 2017 when Chase and Virgil transferred here, and it happened in 2023 when we got the guy from Northwestern, Clement, came here and played, and he was a starter. He was a guy who was been a starter.
But you still had Eli here.
Well, but I'm saying, but Clement took the majority of the snaps through the season. So that Coach Selfo in his entire time here has had some really good continuity quarterbacks. So what I'm saying is, this will be the 3rd season since he's been here where we haven't had a guy coming back who had at least been in the program starting quarterback. So that's my concern, right? Might be y'all's too, just about how those guys come together, how they lead the offense, how they lead the quarterback room, and how they compete in camp, and how they get better, and how they can take you what level can they take you to this season on the offensive side of the football? So that's mine coming in 2025. Is just these quarterbacks and who's going to step up and take the role and be the guy, is what, as they say.
Are you want me to go?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have two that kind of stick out to me is the last couple of years when we needed a big play, we threw the ball to Darius Lewis, and he just seemed to always make a play. In a big situation, you think back to the touchdown against SFA, where he grabs that touchdown there right at the end, and everybody in the stadium knew we were throwing him the ball, and he's not there. So I do think that we have more talent in the wide receiver room this year, but that's a very valuable part of the offense of who's the guy when the game's on the line that you can throw the ball to that's going to make a play. We've had some really good ones. You think of Gage, who, by the way, Gage is probably going to make the Browns. I don't know if you've seen, he's like having an unbelievable camp. You think of CJ Turner, Austin Mitchell. When game's on the line, who can you count on throwing the football to? And that's something with a new quarterback like Robbie's talking about, that's going to have to become a development and a trust. So I think that's certainly something that it's got to play out as the year goes on. You have some guys that have played, but you haven't had anybody that's been the guy when the game's on the line. So I'm anxious to see who is in that role. And maybe it's not one guy. Maybe it's multiple guys. We'll be better if it's multiple guys. But Darius Lewis, for being a 5'8", 150-pound receiver, was about as good as a guy the last 2 years. He was so good for us. And then for me as well, I'm hearing a lot about our defensive line and how good it is, and it's so depth to have so many pieces back, and we do. But Mark, you look at last year's team, we were pretty dynamic at the defensive end spot. When you're talking about Warren Peoples, who's now in NFL camp, and Shamar Pearl, who had an NFL body, probably one of the best looking defensive linemen we've ever had. Those guys aren't there anymore. And they really fed off of each other as far as rushing the passer. I think one of the reasons Warren Peoples was as good last year is because people were doubling Shamar, and then they kind of started doubling Warren, and Shamar had a bigger second half of the season. But to me, who can disrupt the quarterback on third down? Because we lost a couple of really good ones off of last year's team.
Well, that is my concern. And it's not really a concern. It's just, again, like you said, you got to see it. Who's it going to be? I think we're going to have guys. Now, what I think is going to happen, I don't think you're going to have that, just those two behemoths, those two rockets coming off the edge. I think you're going to retool how you play, but I think it's going to be covered up a little bit. But you're going to be so much better at linebacker, and then we're going to have a lot more just veteran presence and ability to run and hit on the back end. And I think that's kind of where you're going to make up a little bit. But you're so good inside. You got and you got to stay healthy. I mean, I think that's a big deal with Caleb Proctor. And you've got healthy Peyton Anderson looks really good right now. And then Ahmad Bradley is taking a big step. So you got those three guys in the middle. And they've added some other pieces to it. But again, somebody's got to emerge. That would be my biggest concern on defense.
But Josh Randall, he can get out, but he's not an every down player.
But I will say this: I think the way they're going to use him, he'll be on the field more. He is a rocket. He will get to the quarterback. His snap per sack ratio or sack per snap ratio is off the chart because he hasn't played that many snaps. He's got a ton of sacks. His production, and if he doesn't get the sack, he's harassing the quarterback. I think you're going to see him in there more, simply because you're going to need him more. Last year you had Shamar and Warren Peoples, who are every down players. So, but I do think you'll see him play a little bit more, not every down, just probably more snaps. But that is one of my concerns. And then obviously you got a new kicker, albeit an All-American who comes in. That's always a concern because he's never kicked in a Lion uniform. There's always a pressure changing teams and that sort of thing. And
the operation.
And the operation, it's going to be different for him. So he's got to go out and make kicks early and establish himself. I do think you got a really talented freshman here as well. But I think the kicking game is going to be great, solid. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. But and again, the quarterback, as Robbie mentioned, and it's not so much the talent level. It's just again, they haven't started games here for Southeastern, and again, you've got to get on the same page with the wide receiver. So those are the concerns. And
okay, I got another one, Mark. Here's one for you. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. you also are going to be starting 2 tackles on offense that played a lot last year, but they weren't the guy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I guess what I'm trying to say is there wasn't the expectation for them starting last year. And now it's like, okay, these are our guys. Yeah. Because they were coming in and filling in last year. And it was like, oh, look how well he's playing because he's filling in. But now you're the starter. I mean, that's a different role.
Yeah, it is. Now, I guess it's not as big a concern for me simply because both of them have started games, have had to start and play the whole game due to injury toward the end of the year, and both played pretty well. Now, are they as good as Raheem Wicks and Jao Orgeron? Remains to be seen. I know Logan Potter has really come on, and we started to see that last year when
he's one of the best stories. Not only for us, but for college football. I mean, this is a young man that, almost got cut.
Yeah.
And ends up playing really well yet last year. And now he's a starter, local product, came in, big guy. He's huge, but didn't have very good feet, wasn't very athletic. And he's turned himself into a good college football player. And, that's a great story.
Yeah, it is. Now, coming out of high school, he was a good looking kid. I mean, he had a good frame, a good body. Got here, was overweight when he showed up, and it just took him a while to really catch up to college football and get in the weight room, get his body. He's still a big guy. He's 330 pounds at 6'5", but he moves so much better. He's just a mature offensive lineman. And that's probably the one thing that has been so impressive for Frank Selfo and his tenure here is the ability to develop local high school offensive linemen and keep them and then be productive. That really is an amazing story because how for years it's try this guy, try that guy, get in the portal, go to JUCO. You had offensive linemen, just a revolving door of guys. Yeah, but AJ Hop was here for 7 years, and they were able to take guys that nobody else wanted. Maybe a little bit not quite fit the profile, maybe a 6'2" offensive lineman that could run, beef them up a little bit, or maybe a tall, rangy guy that they could get in the weight room. And they've made starters out of those guys. And if you look at the offensive line, they're all high school kids, and they're all local, Louisiana product.
And that's always, and at our level, that's always the hardest challenge because Louisiana doesn't produce offensive linemen.
That's the key. That's the biggest untold story, I think, of this football team. And again,
the program.
That's amazing because trust me, it's hard to find quality offensive linemen, and we seem to produce them year after year. And I think that just speaks to the culture, and it speaks to AJ Hop. And now Sam Gregg's the new offensive line coach, comes from Southern Miss. I think he's picked, it seems like so far so good with him. He's been an offensive coordinator. So he was a great fit for this team. And so far in camp, they've done a great job. So there's continuity there. So that's probably why I don't have as big a concern. Although you got 2 tackles you got to replace. Yeah, I mean, just on the surface, it would be. But, again, your quarterbacks are you don't have that pocket, sit in the pocket, can't move quarterback. You have 2 guys who can get out, step up, not afraid to stay in the pocket, though, and they can extend play. So I think that's going to help with young tackles, or not young tackles, but new tackles. And you're going to be really good inside. So I think this offensive line is going to be pretty good.
Well, I like you guys. Real quickly, we'll continue to do this through the season. Right now, this week, we're going to do a quick synopsis, just y'all's take on the non-conference part of the schedule in 2025. Obviously, it starts with Louisiana Tech, and then we'll wrap up with LSU. So my take on those games, obviously, we've done the FBS thing a million times. This is our 3rd year in a row playing 2 FBS games in a single, or 4th year in a row, playing 2 FBS games in a single season, which I don't really like, but I know it's kind of where we are. We'll start first with Tech, good local trip in the sense of an in-state team. I know the old guard of line football players loves playing Tech because if you go back into when they were playing in the 60s and the 70s, La Tech was, and before that even, La Tech was a common opponent of Southeastern. But this is the 3rd time the Lions have played Louisiana Tech since 2003. Played them in 2008, played them in 2021, and then back here in 2025. Great stadium, good trip for the fans. look, a team that is coming off a bad season, a coach and a coaching staff who's probably playing for their jobs because they're going to be going into a new league next year. They're leaving Conference USA and they're going to go into the Sun Belt. So if their coaching staff does not have a great season, they're going to try to make a splash with a new hire, going to the new league, some excitement, and that staff knows that. So they want to have a good season this year, and it starts with Southeastern trying to assert their will on a team that they believe that they're better than, an FCS. So we'll see how those go. We haven't had a ton of success in those games in terms of a winning perspective. We haven't won one. We've had our chances, but including when we were there in 2021. But look, it is what it is. Hopefully you can keep it close, give yourself a chance in the fourth quarter, see what happens. But the next two games are vital. At Murray State, Mississippi Valley State at home, two FCS games that are going to count towards playoff Division I wins. I don't know how much Mississippi Valley State is going to help you in the power rankings, probably not much at all, but it will be that extra D1 win. Murray's going to be a tough game on the road. It's a return trip from when they came to Strawberry Stadium in 2022. So we're going to return the trip up there. A new team, a new coaching staff, a lot of transfers on that team. A game you're going to have to go play well in. You don't want to be snuck up on the road and lose a game that you shouldn't lose. Mississippi Valley State coming back for your home opener, a team that I think that you can beat on paper, but you got to go out there and execute. And then LSU, just a great game for the fans to get to take part in, going to Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge. I thought it was a great day when we went there in 2018. And I think I saw a lot of people walking around the stadium pregame. They were wearing like a LSU T-shirt and a Southeastern hat, or vice versa. So they had that. Maybe I went to Southeastern, but I'm a big LSU fan as well. And we can debate on here about what we think people should really be doing. But that was good to see. Is like, hey, we're kind of enjoy this day, and so I'm sure that's what it'll be like again at the end of September. But ultimately, look, 4 games that you're going to be having a chance to. You want to go the worst case. You want to go 2-2 out of, and see if you get lucky and see if you can find a way to go 3-1, and just stay healthy before you get into the conference race. Come the back half of the season. So, Alan, your take on the first 4 games?
Excited about playing Tech. Week 1, and I think it's a good measuring stick. And one thing I think that is important about this schedule, and I know we're talking about non-conference, but since we're playing 2 FBS games, which I've been openly. I've been talking about this for years. Any platform I get on, if we're going to be serious about being a national contender, which I think that we're close to being, is we got to stop playing 2 FBS games. I mean, it's got to happen. You look at all the teams that win and go deep in the playoffs, it's because they're playing home games, and especially now this year it's a 12-game schedule, but an 11-game schedule, it's very difficult when you're playing 2 FBS opponents. But that's for another day. I've said that a bunch. But the one thing about this schedule is because both the FBS games are in state, one at Louisiana Tech, and then obviously the one at LSU, which you have to have no hotels for. You can drive over day of the game. It allows you to use your budget for a flight for UIW. And that might not seem like a big deal, but if one of those FBS games this year was Oklahoma State, okay, and we had to fly to Stillwater, then you don't get the opportunity to fly to UIW, which is a much more important game for us as far as not being on a bus for however long to get over to San Antonio. So I think that's a certainly important part of this thing is the way the 2 FBS games lined up, that they're Louisiana schools that we don't have to fly to. Also, there was a lot of doubt on this Mississippi Valley State game because this was an open game that they had to replace last year. And I want to give Kimler Chappell, who's now in charge of scheduling non-conference games and working the schedule, a lot of credit because, at some point they didn't know who we were going to play. You didn't know if it was going to be an NAIA school, a Division III school, which basically for playoffs, you might as well not even play those games. But you want to play the game, especially earlier in the year. I think adding Mississippi Valley State, we have not had a ton of success with home and homes with the SWAC and all that. And I know there's been some confusions with that, but being able to get them to come here, and especially to come here first, was very important. And so I want to tip my hat to that. So you have a couple of FCS games, cross Division I conferences that you can be competitive in, that on paper you should win those games, but you never know how it plays out. You got to go on the road to Murray, and they're kind of a wild card. I know they got a bunch of transfers. Mark will talk about that. and then Mississippi Valley State coming in here. But overall, I like the non-conference schedule this year. I know last year got a lot of notoriety because you had a bunch of really good opponents, but that didn't work out for us, and we didn't get rewarded the way I think we should have gotten rewarded for playing those games. So let's see how it plays out this year with a couple of Division I games that on paper that are certainly winnable, not against premier programs, but they are Division I programs. One on the road, one at home, and then your 2 FBS games.
I will add one quick not really editorial comment, but we're going to see how consistent the committee is, possibly, at the end of the year, based off of how they awarded Northern Arizona a playoff bid last year, kind of penalized Southeastern for their tough schedule. Northern Arizona played a softer schedule.
Yeah, bottom line, Northern Arizona got the 8 wins, and we got the 7, though they had a –
Right. They got the 8 wins. Now, this year, our schedule is probably not as difficult in the non-conference, even though you have 2 FBS, but on paper, not as difficult. So, in other words, if you have a similar record at the end of the year, if you win 8 games, we'll see how consistent they are. So, I just want to get that out there first. But, look, I'm long past trying to predict an FBS win. I mean, we're over in that realm. Since we brought football back. I mean, we beat a couple of transitional teams. Jacksonville State was transitioning up, Texas State way back when we beat them, but they weren't full-fledged FBS. But I do think, I will say this, if we're going to be a playoff team and be a team to be taken seriously, you have to expect to go beat Louisiana Tech. That's not saying you're going to beat Louisiana Tech. I'm not saying that at all. You have to have that expectation when you take that road trip as a business trip. We're good enough to beat them, and if we don't believe that, we shouldn't even be talking about being an FCS playoff team. So that'll get that out there too. So you got to establish some expectations, go up there and take care of business, because that is a game you can go win. You just can. Nicholls State went in there last year. It was 25-17. Played them really tough, turned the ball over. But,
and not a good Nicholls team.
And not a good Nicholls team that won 3 or 4 games last year. So this is a Louisiana Tech team that did go out and get some transfers. I don't know how impactful they're going to be, but they went out and got some. We got some new players as well. I do think that's a game we should be able to go up there and be competitive. We were in 2021 when they were a good football team that had played well up to our game. Actually went to NC State or Mississippi State and almost beat them. And the week before, had some close losses after that and kind of got beaten down. But that was a good Tech team to start the year. We lose by 3. And then in 2008, that was a bowl team that we lost by 11 points or whatever it was. So we have been competitive with them. We've been competitive with UL Lafayette, UL Monroe, even South Alabama got away from us in the second half. But then you go back to last year, the Southern Miss game, that was disappointing. I think everybody that saw that game in the trenches and athletically, very competitive game. The score got away late. But I do think opening the season, that is a game that you have to expect to go up there and play well and have a chance to win. That's just my opinion. Now, Murray State, have no idea what they're going to have. 60-something new players on the roster. They're going to be at home. I know their head coach is a Nick Saban disciple. So you got to think he's going to get that turned around in year 2. We've seen what year 2s can do. We saw that with Ron Roberts in 2013. So who knows how good they're going to be.
Also saw with Coach Selfo here at 19.
And Coach Selfo here, exactly. So year 2s are, you can turn a team around pretty quickly now. Mississippi Valley, I mean, that's a game we should win, especially if you expect to be a playoff team. LSU's LSU. You go over there, cash the check, and hope you play well and come out healthy. But again, you're looking to go 2-2. I think if you go 2-2, you're set up pretty well. As long as you don't get beat up and you play reasonably well, I think that's the benchmark you should shoot for. But you hope you come out 3-1. If you can come out 3-1, I think you really got a chance to have a great season.
You say that too, Mark. I was joking with some friends today. If you can get Tech and then win the next 2 and be 3-0. Going into that LSU game, you'll probably be a top 10 team in the FCS if you get that FBS win week 1.
Or at least ranked for sure.
You'll be ranked for sure. What that could do for our season is you'll have a lot of people in Louisiana that will know what we are about because we're going to play that LSU game. You know what I mean? They're gonna that whole week. Oh, this is a good team. They're 3-0. They're top 15 of the nation. Whatever. So let's just see how it plays out. I mean, obviously the season's not over if you don't win.
I guess what
beat Tech, you get a lot of publicity, I guess, for the rest of the season as far as because you're going to get talked about a lot for that LSU.
Yeah, great job, guys. I think that's great. We'll lay out the conference schedule as we keep going through the weeks here leading up to the opening game. Mark, quickly talk about what's behind you there. I've talked about you and I this week. Road for 25. We're trying to get fans to donate $25 a month recurring to the NIL program at Southeastern to help football. You can go online at collective.com, donate your money. Look, $25. Look, money, things are expensive out there in the world today. Money's tight. You got kids, you got responsibilities, you got animals, whatever you have in your life that takes your money from you. I know it's out there, but if you're a big Lion fan and you care about this program, the success of it from here on out, especially in the football realm, really in everything, is about the NIL program. And if you don't have one, you're not going to be successful long term. And this program has to get one going off the ground because it's not there right now, especially on the football side of things. Basketball's a different story right now. Football's trying to get to that position where they can start paying some players consistent revenue to keep them here on campus. You find a good high school kid or a junior college player has a great year, you can't lose them constantly because you have no NIL money. So it's important. $25 a month donation. You can donate more if you'd like, but they're trying to get 1,000 people to give $25 a month. And I think it's been a pretty good start. I know I've signed up and I'm doing it. I know Mark has, Alan has. So look, I know you get nickel and dimed everywhere these days, but if you really care about the Lions, and if you're still watching this podcast at this point in the podcast, you do care about the Lions because, you have nothing else to do but listen to us. $25 a month is something you could definitely give, I think, to help this program and make it successful. So go to lineupcollective.com, try to give your part as best you can to help the NIL program for Southeastern football. In all sports. And if you can give more, great. If you can't, that's fine. But just be a part of it. Put your skin on the wall with the team and say, look, I want this team to be good. So I'm going to do it. I can't play on the field. I can't recruit. I can't do these things, but I can give a little bit of money a month to help Coach Shelfo go into a young man's living room and say, hey, don't go to UL Lafayette, don't go to Tech, don't go to South Alabama, don't go to LSU, don't go to Alabama because you're of NIL. When you like it here, we like you here. Here's a little something that we can give you to stay here in Hammond and help contributing to the Lions' success. So quickly, Mark, just your thoughts on that real quick.
Well, if they're listening to us right now, they're probably giving more than $25 a month. But no, seriously, it's a way to impact the program directly. And I know in the past, hey, we need a donation to the athletic department. You donate, and all of a sudden it ends up being taken by the administration to go pay. In other words, they cut the budget by how much ever gets donated. I think that's been the issue forever here. This goes directly into a fund that gets dispersed in NIL. So, and you can dedicate it directly to football. So, and we're not talking about, $1 million NILs like you hear on, the SEC and the Power Fives and stuff like that. We're talking about a couple of grand a month, $1,500 a month, $500 a month, whatever, meals, something to help these kids while they're here, supplement. Some of them have no income at all, and some of them can barely afford they can't even live at home. And it just helps their family out that we can do something for them. And again, it's not going to be every player on the team getting NIL. It's going to be a few, and obviously the impact type players. But you can do something, and it may not be 25. Maybe it's 10. Maybe it's 5. Maybe it's one donation of a couple $100 or whatever. But if you average $300 for the year, and 1,000 people do it, it's going to raise $300,000. That'll go a long way. Hopefully raise more than that. Hopefully you can raise, $1 million for the entire fund. Who knows? But I just know that, guys will sit back, you lose a game and you start complaining about, this play call or this guy did that, or we turned the ball over. What are we doing? And you're not donating. It's kind of hard to take your complaint seriously. If you're not going to step up and do something. If you don't like how the quarterback plays, donate some money and go get one. That's what I say. So that's my 2 cents. Alan, what do you think?
My 2 cents is, it's $300 a year, 25 hours a month. We hope that, we get a lot of people sign up for this. And, we're not doing this to beat Mississippi State on a player. We're doing this to beat McNeese on a player, to beat Nichols on a player, to beat Western on a player, to beat UIW, who's spending NIL money. If you want to look at NIL, look at UIW's roster. They're just going around the FCS and trying to take teams' players and build like an FCS,
because they can.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're picking players. So, that's what we're trying to do. We want to help this coaching staff. And then the other thing it does is think of, I want you to think back to the big group a few years ago. The Gage Laverdane, the Zy Alexander, the Jack Hendersons, the Dom Serapiglia, the guys that we lost all in that one big group on that really good team we had a few years ago, is, maybe you keep one of those guys for an extra year. The really good ones, look, the Bauer Sharps of the world, they're going. I mean, they're getting too much money thrown at them. But maybe you keep them an extra year, and we have them one more year. So there's just something you want to – that's the other thing this is about. It's not always about getting new players. It's retaining the players you have. Coach Stelpo's done a really good job, and his staff of signing high school players and developing them. But we don't want to develop them for them to go to the Sun Belt. We want to develop them for them to stay here and let's win championships in hand.
And then there's a case of a young man, take a Caleb Proctor, for example. Here's a guy who had a chance to leave.
And we were able to scrounge up some money and get an NIL deal with him, and he stuck around. Yeah. And we're hoping that's going to pay major dividends for us this year.
And he's a young man that loves it here, and he wanted to stay here. So, but that's what we're talking about, just being able to help in some kind of way to keep the players who want.
Well, look, let's talk about the story that came out this week about Ian Connerly Goodley. I mean, he left. He did it. He got in the portal. He went to Troy. And now he's right back. Not because he wasn't playing. He was starting it.
Yeah.
But he liked it here. But some of these kids, they don't have a choice. If somebody's throwing money in their face, they got to take it. And if you were in that situation, you'd probably take it too. And so this is an opportunity for us to be able to say, hey, we can't give you what Mississippi State can give you. We can't give you what Ole Miss can give you. But we can give you this. If you like it here in Hammond, you like the culture, you like what with the coach staff and the level of play, and that you're going to get developed, then stick around and play here. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, you just said it. You're not going to match some of these NILs these FBS teams are throwing around, even for backup players. But what you can do is put a foot forward to help them feel comfortable staying. So they're not just taking a little bit more money. But they're getting something to be happy and play football because they know they're going to play here. And so that's all it is. And again, just go to we'll have the link, Lineup Collective, here, over this video. So just go to it, log on. It's real easy. Put your credit card information in. You can select an amount. Obviously, you can select the sport you want to give to. We're talking football here because we're the football broadcast team, so that's what we're talking about. But you can really give to any sport. But football needs a lot because you got 110 players on a roster, and you need more money to find more impact players. But just do something to help. Any little bit helps.
What's more important to you for $25 a month, the Lions or Netflix? And that's all it really comes down to.
That's all it comes down to, right? That's simple, right?
Yeah. All right. Great job, guys. Thanks as always. We'll be back next week with another weekly update from camp. Mark will be doing some updates during the week. I'll probably jump on with him, maybe Alan as well throughout the week, maybe two of those between Monday and Friday, with just what we've seen through the day. Those are little quick 10, 15-minute things that kind of what's going on in the current situation from Cactus so far.
Yeah, we'll do some just individual position breakdowns, just little short videos, break down kind of what we see over the course of the next couple of weeks.
All right.
All right, guys.
Great job as always for Mark Willoughby, Alan Waddell, Robbie Rhodes saying good night. This has been the Southeastern Sports Network podcast.